and it's going to reference back to the original object, and we have a recursive explosion. So what I need to do to make this work is I need to create a new JSON object, and I could just say I could create a new anonymous type in here. I could just say new and then assign some properties and so on, but that's a little bit ugly and I don't want that kind of thing embedded into my controller. Plus I might want to reuse it on a show request, for instance. Or details I should say. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work with the dinner view model. I'm going to use a nice lightweight class and give it a factory method, and let's see what we come up with. Here we go. It's a very, very easy class. Again, super lightweight. This should be no problem for the serializer to munch up and crunch up. And then on dinner view model, I have a factory method here that's going to return an iList of JSON dinner. Kind of in the same way I'm returning an iList of dinner view model by passing in an IEnumerable of dinners. And you can see I'm just spinning everything to a list. And this is good. This constructor here takes a dinner object and it sets the properties. So now I should be good to go with the serializer. I come back in here to the controller and I say dinner view model. And I say get JSON dinners, and then I pass in dinners. Great. Now I can reuse this everywhere. Oops, the parentheses. There we go. And now I can reuse this everywhere, and I'm happy. So hopefully everybody else will be happy. I hit F5, and my stuff should load, and I should see a big fat bang. Yep. Good news. Object, 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 object. That's exactly what we want to see. Now we can use this thing to load the pins on the map. Alright, well the final step here is I'm going to remove the alert and I'm going to use some more jQuery goodness, and I'm going to use the each function, which is pretty cool. This is basically saying a for each inside of jQuery, and what I'm able to do since I'm working with JSON data is I can take the data that's passed down from the getJSON method. You can see it's being passed in on the fly right there, and I can create a new function to deal with it. So I'm calling it a dinner. So basically I'm saying for each object in the JSON result, here's a function so you can go do something with it. And then I'll close that off. Great. So in case you're wondering what this is the loop counter. It kind of built into the each function, which is pretty groovy. So now all I really need to do is I just need to load a pin with the dinner data. This is something that a lot of people don't quite catch with JSON. JavaScript itself is a pretty free dynamic language. So we know that when we get the JSON results back, they are part of our JSON dinner. If I open up the dinner view model here, JSON dinner, these properties should be exposed on the object. So I should be able to take the latitude, longitude, title, and description and send it over to the load points thing. So I can just say load pin, and I can pass in dinner.latitude, dinner.longitude, if I can spell it right, and then dinner.title, and finally dinner center.description. Okay, great. That's it. So this is how we handle JSON callback. So, and I will clean this up in a second. I know that kind of looks crunchy and munchy there. So there we go. There's our pins. Awesome stuff. And this is all the test data that I just put in. So that's how we deal with JSON callback. It's pretty easy. So what I think I'm going to do now is sort of parse this out a little cleaner so you don't have to sit here and look at all this nested function calls. There we go, a little bit cleaner. We now have a nice load dinner function that passes in a dinner object. And again, this is JavaScript, and we're good to go. This looks pretty clean, and when I run this, everything will pop up nicely. Now I should say there is a lot of cleanup I can do with this JavaScript, but I'd like to continue on and keep on moving. Getting close to being finished with the mapping functionality here on the index view, and so far everything seems to be going together pretty well. I've added a little bit more styling and layout to the home page here, so now we have the map shoved to the left and a list that is kind of set up for me on the right side here, which presents me with an interesting issue. So as you remember, I'm loading all the dinners with a JSON callback, so I don't really need my model anymore because I'm not doing any server-side stuff on the page. Yet, if I look at the NerdDinner.com site, over here you can see I have a list of popular dinners, and each one of these things links off back to the dinner that we can click on. So I kind of need to fix that. That's okay, jQuery to the rescue again. I can reuse the client-side code, and let's do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to load a list on the fly and shove it into this div tag. And cover your eyes, this isn't going to be the nicest code, but again, we can always tweak this as time goes on. Something like this ought to do the trick, and then I know when I run this it's going to look ugly, but I will have a function where I load in the information. Right now I just want to see if it's going to load up and display. So if I load up the page, yep, good. So it displays all of the dinners on the right side. That's nice. But of course, as we can see, we got the title. That's good. We have an ugly date. We also need to format this a little bit better. So what I need to do now is to write some formatting code, also some stuff that can handle or a centralized function that will handle this output. So let's write that real quick. Still not optimal, but getting there. I have a function here that is separated out a little bit, and it's loading up the link. It's going to go in the list on the right side, and I have some formatting functionality that I dropped in, formats the link in HTML, formats the date, etc. So that's all good stuff. Again, it's not that much code, but I'm going to drop all of this into a separate JavaScript file in just a little bit. Good news is, if I run this, and it pops up, I will now see a nice list on the right side. That's what I want to see. So if I click it, curing polio, that's always a good dinner to go. Well, I'm nearing the finish line here, and I have just one last thing to do, and that is I got to make it so that this page makes some sense. So in preparation for this, what I've done is I've gone into the site here and I've cleaned things up a lot. What I've done is I've centralized all of the scripts into a single NerdDinner.js file. Not all of them, at least, just a lot of the main ones like load point, load pin, load map, and all the formatters and so on. What I need to do now is I need to expand this details page. So I'm going to start by adding references to the script files, and then I want to output my map again, and then finally the data itself. Here we go. Here's the references that I need to use for the page. I got my jQuery, NerdDinner.js. I've referenced the mapping functionality, and I know previously I said you don't want to put server-side code into JavaScript. However, this page is incredibly simple, and to do anything different would probably add a layer of complexity. So I'm going to go back on what I just said. I think it's okay if you just have a little bit, and I think this is fairly clear. And then I'm loading up the map, and I'm loading a pin onto the map, and so that couldn't be simpler. We've centralized all that into a central NerdDinner.js file, and here's the page. Pops up when I click on .NET Futures. Great. So the last thing I need to do is to add some details over here, and that is pretty simple. So let's add that real quick. Okay, here's the final list of things that we need. This just says the when and the where, description, and so on. Notice here that I'm HTML encoding everything. What this does is it takes special characters that are HTML and encodes them into decipherable characters by the browser. So it's like a replacement technique. Last thing you want is someone writing a script into their description of their dinner and having that script cause havoc on your pages. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this deep dive into ASP.NET MVC as we rebuild the NerdDinner.com website. The point of this webcast was to give you a deep look at building out a site with ASP.NET MVC. I've enjoyed doing it, and I look forward to doing another one.